Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me tonight to talk about how little groups, even a group of one, can make a big positive difference. So let's get started. If you like what you hear tonight, please leave a like, tell your friends, send me a message, please. A lot of times we often hear people say, or maybe we even say it ourselves, that, someone should do something about that. Or I wish someone, someone should make a change about something, but it's usually immediately followed by some variant of, well, I would if I had more, and you can substitute, time, money, power, political friends, whatever. So the list of justifications is nearly endless as to why we can't do those things. But why do people and us act like that? I think one big reason is because, and we talked about this before in our own personal lives, people tend not to envision the outcome that they want and work backwards. And so they think of some huge vision, but it's just overwhelming. And we've talked before about the advantage of starting at the end and then working backwards. And then as you come across the problems, you break them down one at a time and you realize, wow, what seemed like a really huge task is really a bunch of manageable, smaller tasks. So, like I say, they think of some huge outcome, look at it from the viewpoint of being at the very beginning of the task, and are immediately overwhelmed because it is a huge thing. You think of some of the people you see on the world stage or whatever. They're making worldwide changes. Do you think they just got up one morning and went from zero to making worldwide changes? No, they got up and they figured, what's the next thing I have to do to accomplish that? And they did that. And they said, what's the next step after that? And they did that. And it's people who sit and really do things in a stepwise fashion and don't try and envision the entire outcome all at once can work through without being overwhelmed, because the task they're working against is just a very manageable task that's leading to the ultimate goal. An example here in church, we're having a church picnic soon. And I was at the volunteer meeting recently. One of the most interesting things to me is that many of the volunteers are either elderly women or very elderly men. I mean, the core group is actually only about 6 or 10 people with probably about a median age of about 80. And, including the other volunteer workers like myself who are just kind of coming in to do nondescript jobs, there's still probably only about 20 people tops. But yet that small group of 6 or 10 people have planned, organized, gotten donations for, purchased food, made legal arrangements, and much, much more for the other nearly 300 expected people. It doesn't take a lot of people to have a big positive influence. But you might say, well, yeah, fine, that's fine for a picnic. But what about something important? So, first off, I happen to think picnics and group gatherings and such and kickball are all pretty important stuff. I mean, in reality, actually, social gatherings are important and they don't just happen. They take a lot of planning to make it seem effortless. But more seriously, I was traveling a few years back when I used to do a lot more traveling. And I think it was in Chicago. I was happened to be in Chicago for two events. And when I travel, I almost always listen to the local news when I'm there in some area, because it's interesting, different take on the world, events that you don't hear about where you are. And there's someone interviewing an 80-something-year-old woman who had just gotten a big recognition award. She was tired of seeing her neighborhood getting worse and worse. And even though she was mostly apartment bound because she was in a wheelchair, she still called neighbors and organized people to form a neighborhood help group. Their purpose was simply to be a presence in the neighborhood so that the other people there knew that there were people who cared and they would take action. They also provided activities for kids at risk and help with schoolwork, and basically just gave the community a community spirit. And as I mentioned, she got a community service award for helping stop the decline in a fairly large part, a region of the city. She was a very well-known person at that point. However, she'd only been doing this for a couple of years. And like I said, she's one older woman in a wheelchair, needed help to get out of her building, but she wasn't afraid to talk to anyone who would listen. And most importantly, give them hope, direction, and a plan for success. Even one person can be a significant element of positive change. The same is true in politics, especially at the local levels. I know so many people who complain about what their county, their city, their town, their community is doing, yet they couldn't tell you when the next meeting was for the governing body or what the rules were for presenting or anything. I used to go to the town board meetings quite often for a number of years, and there are about 10 regular people who always showed up every month. Some had a specific agenda. Some just wanted to ensure the local government stayed open and transparent. There's one older woman, she'd get up and talk pretty much every single month. And the only thing she would do is very simple. She'd simply list off the things that the board said last month they're going to have done by this month, the meeting we were at, and note that the work didn't appear to have been completed and how long it had been open for. Well, dear members of the board, last month you said you would have that resolved by this month. It wasn't brought up in the board meeting, I noticed, and you've actually been talking about this for 5 months now. And that she wouldn't say, and when's it going to happen? She would just say that. But this allowed the local reporters to then go and pester the elected officials as to why they had these continuing open items. It was actually a very important duty that she was doing. One solitary older woman, no great thing except she went with the clipboard, wrote down everything that was said, and next, looked at the minutes when they were posted, when they said they were going to have it done, and listened the next month and checked off items. And if they weren't done, presented to the board and said, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. She made the board accountable for their actions each and every month, which changed the whole feeling of the board meeting, because they knew that she and then the papers would hold them accountable for the things that otherwise they could just say and everyone would forget. Small groups, even a group of only one person, can have a huge positive change. So the next time you or someone else says, someone should do something about that, what the productive next steps are. Immediately envision and describe the desired outcome to get buy-in, either from yourself or from others. And then before anyone, including you, can object, throw out a likely next step, suggest something. This is really important. You want to stop the negative thinking before it can even sprout and take root. So they say, well, somebody should really do something about taxes. Say, that's a good idea. Let's have a meeting tomorrow about it, and we'll go to the board and see what taxes are decided by the state and what taxes are decided locally that we have, some ability to make a change in. Just immediately propose something. Don't wait a second. And the next step, and I forgot to mention, that next step should be something very soon. And so you don't want to say, well, you're right, we should do something, and then say, what your proposal is, and then just let it sit, because everyone will lose interest and it'll kind of just drift away. And say, so something very, very soon, and say, so like I said, good idea. Let's have a 15-minute Zoom call tomorrow night, and we'll write out a list of what we want to do. Right then, just immediately propose an action, propose what the next step's going to be, who's in. And if everyone says no, then it was just pointless complaining, right? People love to sit around and complain, some people. And if they're not even willing to go and discuss it further, then it was probably just open complaining. But very often, people are just looking for a leader, someone to show them a path forward. And if they see that, they're more than willing to help out. And I saw that a lot, actually, just going back again to this little tiny example that just happened on the picnic. It turns out there were a couple people who just really championed it and just put out things like volunteer sign-up lists and stuff like that. It wasn't a big thing, but it was a next step. And there were a lot of people who signed up. And some of them couldn't make it. But overall, like I said, there were probably 15 more people showed up at that meeting and were there who otherwise, if someone hadn't taken a little teeny first step, it wouldn't have happened. And who's going to take that next step? You. That's right. You can be the leader. You don't have to be somebody amazing. You just have to be somebody who's willing to take action. You just have to have confidence enough in yourself to move forward and take that next step. If you've watched for a while, you might remember when we had a whole episode on Chef Jose Andres, he had the one who founded and is still heavily involved in World Central Kitchen. And remember, he was helping to set up emergency kitchens in Ukraine and providing food to the victims of the war of aggression by Russia. And so the staff running these kitchens, they were all over Ukraine, right? They just little places, a little bakery, a little food shop or something. All of a sudden they realized with a little bit of help that they could produce 10 times and sometimes even 100 times or more food out of their kitchens than they were before. When they first started, they didn't even think they could double their output. But with a little bit of guidance and a little bit of help, they 10x their output. They 100 times their output. All it took was one person with a vision and a plan. And once they saw that and they understood it, then they had the confidence and they knew they could go ahead and bring that to the next step and make a huge change in their environment. You can be that one person for something that matters to you. You can be that agent of positive change. So your homework, always optional, is to think of some one thing you'd like to change. It can be big or small, important or not, but it does have to be important to you. Then plan how, if it were to come up in conversation, you could move it from pointless complaining to an actionable plan. Just run through your head. Somebody says, or you say, how you bring it up, somebody's saying, just complaining about nothing. You say, hey, what about all that trash that's building up in that empty lot? Now you've introduced it in the conversation. And then you have to think about how you would move that into an actual plan, because extra points, if you also think now, probably going to propose a meeting where we get back together and talk about it some more. At that meeting, what do you want to do? How can you divvy up some tasks so everybody feels engaged? That's super important, because if everyone thinks you're just sitting there handing out tasks, nobody's going to be much interested, because when did you become boss of the world? If, however, you're a leader, and a leader doesn't just assign tasks. A leader provides guidance, provides hope, provides a path forward. And now if you say, who's good at, getting solicitations from companies? Somebody said, well, I did it for the scouts one year. Say, okay, how about you talk to the garbage company and see if they would volunteer a truck and we could all go and pick up the garbage in that lot, right? Now people are involved. Now they're engaged. Now they see a path forward, and it's kind of like, wow, we didn't think about that. Yeah, that's a good idea. Now we're a group doing something, and it all started because you, one person, took an action. Go as far with it as you want in your mind, talk it over with a friend, and then the two of you can get excited about it. But you can also hone the plan and think about something that's important to you, something you want to change, and how you can go about changing it, and then what the next steps would be. You feel a lot better about it, and you'll also get something done that you really wanted done. So that's it for the evening. And of course, ukr7.com. That's the link where we have links to other organizations who do volunteer work. There's also Ukraine 24. Sorry, I forgot the URL and I did not get it up on the site. That's my fault. I'll try and get that done this week. World Central Kitchen is also there, wck.org. That's the one, of course, the chef Jose Andres founded and runs. Fantastic place. They work not just in Ukraine, but all over the world, and not just internationally, but also in the United States. They're down in Puerto Rico, they're in the islands. They are heavily involved anywhere there are people who are recovering from disasters. So those are both there, World Central Kitchen, and then of course, like I say, ukr7.com is those are links mostly targeting aids to Ukraine. So that's it. Remember, as we talk about often, one of the very best ways to care for yourself is to care for others, because it really takes your focus from out looking inside and looking at the world, just how it affects you, to looking outside and how it affects the whole world, and how you can be a positive agent for change in that respect. So as always, try and help somebody. As I often say, that I have Ukraine is very, very near and dear to me. There's a lot of places with the disasters going on. There's a coup right now in Niger. It just goes on and on and on and on. It just seems that there's things going on all around. We're very fortunate in the United States and in a lot of countries in North America, actually, pretty much all the countries in North America, much of Europe, that we have a lot of fundamental peace and safety. And we forget sometimes that a lot of people do not. And so if you can help someone else move their life forward, it's always a nice thing to do. And I think it'll help you feel better about yourself and energize you about life. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting or useful, please pass it along. And if you can, please hit that like button. If not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear about. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.